Hello and welcome again to the Writer Review. This is Eric Curot Writer, and this week we're going to be taking a look back at the 2017 war drama film titled Journey's End. Now, Journey's End runs for 1 hour and 43 minutes long. It is directed by Saul Dibb. It is produced by Guy de Beaujeu and Simon Reed. The script was written by Simon Reed. It was based off of the novel Journey's End by R.C. Sheriff. The score was done by Natalie Holt, the cinematography by Laurie Rose, and the editing was done by Tanya Redden. And the stars of the movie are Sam Claflin as Butterfield, Paul Bettany, Tom Sturridge, Toby Jones, Stephen Graham, Robert Glenister, Miles Jupp, and Jack Holden. Now, this movie actually is more or less set during World War I. Now, we all know a lot of movies seem to focus a lot on World War II because you could tell that there was a lot more that was happening in World War II. I mean, you had events like the Great Depression and, the Holocaust also came into effect during World War II. And, of course, World War II had larger-than-life characters, real-life larger-than-life characters. Some of them could be portrayed as superheroes, while some of them, and a lot of them, were portrayed as supervillains. You know, you've got your Mussolini, you've got your Hirohito, you've got of course Joseph Stalin, and the life of the party himself, Adolf Hitler. And then of course you got your heroes like your Winston Churchills and your Franklin D. Roosevelt. But the thing about World War I is that it has always been often sadly overlooked because, let's face it, World War II was a longer running war, and World War II definitely had a lot more international flair. And of course, like I said, there was a lot of things that were going on in World War II that led to this deadly, catastrophic war. But World War I was still just as deadly as World War II. Millions of billions of people died. This was definitely a war for the worlds. But they just didn't have, life-like characters, larger-than-life characters. And I'm not trying to sugarcoat it or to make light because it's anything but sugarcoated and it's anything but light. No matter how you look at it, no matter which war I'm looking at, whether it be World War I, whether it be World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam War, the Gulf War, the war in Afghanistan, you name it, any kind of war, it's not going to be anything light or should be taken lightly. So based off of a script by, based off of a novel by R.C. Sheriff, Journey's End tells the tale of 6 soldiers in the midst of a German defensive called Operation Michael, which happened in Aisne during World War I back in 1918. 1918 was where World War I kind of ended, but just because it kind of ended doesn't mean that, it was softening or slowing down. This operative definitely left over 254 people in their graves, and it's just a matter of time that these individuals will likely meet their fate very soon. This movie is anything but lighthearted. And if things are not any better, their leader, Captain Stanhope, played by Sam Claflin, is suffering the fate of post-traumatic stress syndrome mixed with chronic alcoholism to boot, which is definitely far from a pretty combination. Now, the movie is not really actually set in a war zone, but actually in some hidden caverns where you could feel the isolation, the worry about starving, the worry about survival. And if you're claustrophobic in any way sense of anyways, in any sense, shape, or form, then maybe this movie may not necessarily be for you to watch, because it is set in a cavern, and if you're claustrophobic, uh, believe me, it's something you probably will be a little bit squeamish about. And though it's not the first adaptation of this novel, it was originally made in 1930, directed by James Whale, famous for being the director of the first Frankenstein movie. Director Saul Dibb does a serviceable job in creating a well-fleshed-out characters and characters we can adapt to and understand the situation that they are facing. What it succeeds here is that this is a character-driven film, and the characterizations depicted here are handled sincerely and authentically. The 6 principal performers here were performed brilliantly by Sam Claflin, Paul Bettany, Asa Butterfield, Stephen Graham, Toby Jones, and Tom Sturridge. These guys definitely captured their audience by showing great range with their respected characters, and the script ensured that no one was treated as insignificant to the story, let alone no character was usurped. Whatever respected role they were playing, it was treated on an equal proportion. There really wasn't a major character. It was basically just supporting characters, each getting their fun in the sun. The character development is definitely clear, and everyone adds something different to their respected roles. So even though they were faced in the same situation, a matter of when their time is coming, but at the same time, they each bring a little something to the table, so that not everyone feels like we're seeing just one of the same person with a different face. That's kind of basically what I'm trying to get at. Okay, Sam Claflin leads the pack as the deranged leader, Captain Stanhope, whose dramatic turn for the worst is soaked with liquor and whiskey. Paul Bettany plays the part of Stanhope's second-in-command, Osborne, and he kind of sort of has to play off the level-headed optimist, either kind of almost like a big brother, maybe father figure type, to ensure that at the moment you're safe. Even though I do know that deep down inside, he knows that his life is just as much as in grave danger as everyone else's. He's just trying to sort of stay as optimistic as he possibly can, even though that is, at the moment, quite virtually impossible. As Butterfield and Stephen Graham, they definitely hold their own as Osborne's cohorts, Trotter and Raleigh, who have a steady head over their shoulders at the time of the crisis, and Toby Jones as their chef, Private Mason. He definitely provides some well-needed comic relief that still never falls victim to self-parody, because if this movie falls victim to self-parody, then in a movie that is situated at a very, very serious time period, if it goes too far into self-parody, then we can't take a film like this seriously. And I don't think this is the right kind of movie to be taken as a joke, because the situations that these characters face is anything but a joke. This is pretty intense when you think about it. The feeling of keeping these characters real is the reason why this movie is very, very impressive. It's the little details that makes Journey's End all the more special. In a film that shouldn't include humor into the script, knowing full well that the settings take place is in not so happy times, we could enjoy the dialogue better just by adding that formula into the mix. For example, when Trotter asks Mason what kind of soup he's making, Mason responds with a clever one-liner, "It's yellow, sir." Oh, so does that mean it's chicken broth? Or maybe he just doesn't simply know what it is and can only just have a vague response like, "It's yellow." Good enough answer, I suppose. Leave it up to the British to deliver humor like that, as they're always prepared to say something sardonic when you least expect them to. It's just kind of like the kind of humor that the British seem to often like to inflict upon their audience. I'm just joking. Unlike a lot of horror-themed films, character development is definitely quite secondary. But in Journey's End, we are given the opportunity to get invested into the characters, and through each minute of rolling, we get invested into them and their predicament. And sure, we know what's become of them in the end, but through sardonic humor, witty dialogue, and subtle charm that the British are famous for, the dialogue never feels, and the coexistence of each other makes light as a prelude of what's to come. The narrative is definitely set in the bunkers and the trenches, and revealing to the audience what regiments these individuals must go through in order to survive. And yeah, sure, at times they feel bored by the waiting game, but they also can't help the fact that the fear of their lives is in the balance. I mean, I don't envy these people. What these guys are going through, let's face it, it's not a very pleasant thing. This is not a pleasant movie to enjoy. I mean, you could be entertained by the humor, you could be invested into the characters, and by making them larger than life, it might be easier to sit through to watch this film, but in reality, it's actually a little bit hard to sit through because it's long. It's depressing. And even though the movie is an hour and 43 minutes long, the pacing is quite slow, but at least the performers give it their all to sort of make light of the movie, and it just makes the narrative go by a little bit quicker. The performers alone are as amazing as they were, as they weren't only characters that let their emotions speak volume here. The score also contributes in taking your breath away. Now, in blockbuster action films, scores are nearly perfect in capturing the moods and the reactions and the atmosphere towards the direction of their respective genre. But unfortunately, when it comes to independent films like Journey's End, they often fail to meet that expectation. Sometimes I think the scores in independent films tend to be monotone, really kind of like anticlimactic, and maybe even just wanton and mundane. I mean, when you get something out of a Danny Elfman or a Randy Newman or a John Williams type of piece, you'll hear orchestra like really, really injecting into you. But an independent movie, basically, you'll probably hear hollowing one instrument type songs, or somebody playing a mundane song on an acoustic guitar, singing some kind of little happy little jingle of some sort. That's what you get when you think of an independent film. Fortunately, composer Natalie Holt releases an amazing score that will truly take your breath away. The piercing, high-pitched sounds in the background will surely have you trembling. With the close-up shots of the characters, we can feel the intensity of sweat pouring down our backs. We feel like we're in this war zone, just like these 6 soldiers who are trapped in there, just waiting for their demise to come. Because they know they're not going to survive. They know that their situation is beyond hope. Because simply there is no hope. They are going to die. They know it. But it's just a matter of when such an event like this will happen. We don't anticipate it, but we know it's coming near. So if you come into seeing Journey's End expecting a loud, boisterous film with gun battles, blood, courage, cannons, machine guns, death, malice, and gore, well, look elsewhere, because you won't find it in the spite of the settings. Everything is set in a bunker, in a cavern, where it's basically isolated. And we need as much people in the cabin for us to shoot down and kill. And obviously their leader definitely can't seem to lead anymore. He is permanently traumatized, and he's also inebriated, which is not a pretty combination. So without the competence of a dependable leader, they're pretty much up shit's creek without a paddle. They're going to die, and everything is just totally fucked up with them. I'm sorry I can't put it into better words, but that's just how it is. C'est la guerre. This is definitely more of a character study with well-accomplished British performers who let their personalities do all the talking, and that we are more invested in how they're dealing with the situations they're facing over what will happen. It's very humane and very authentic. And I will say one thing for sure. I did not enjoy this movie. But it's not because I hated the movie, but it was because this was a movie that was made not to enjoy, but to actually face the reality. Okay? To enjoy a movie, you kind of has to be a happy-go-lucky movie, or at least a movie that's filled with optimism and hope. I did not enjoy the movie in the sense that I hated the movie. It's just that this movie was designed not to enjoy, but to get invested in. Sure, the characters were great, the acting was fine, the direction, everything about this movie was really, really good. And to enjoy the film, it's not to say that I hate the movie. It's just that it's not a movie to enjoy. This is a war movie. This is a movie where we're going to see people die. What's so enjoyable about watching a person or people die? There's nothing to enjoy about a movie like that. So that's the reason why I did not enjoy the movie, though I liked it. Because everything was real. It felt real. And even though the characters are larger than life and they all had unique personalities and different characterizations, and there was some that was also played for some humorous effect at a time when this movie has nothing humorous to deliver, they still managed to somehow squeeze a little bit in without falling into like satire. And they did a very, very serviceable job at that. Saul Dibb did a great, great adaptation of this movie. Like I said, it's not an original movie. I mean, it was originally released in. This was actually based off of a novel by R.C. Sheriff, but it was also, you know, not an original movie. The original movie was, of course, dated back in 1930 by the creator of Frankenstein, James Whale. At least, you know, they could say that this adaptation did a great, great job at showing us a rare occasion where World War I is getting the center of attention. And I'll say one thing, at least it's a relief that this movie is not a World War II or a Vietnam War movie, because I think we've had too much World War II themed movies. We've had too much Vietnam War movies. So at least it's good that World War I is getting its share of the fun and the sun here. And even though, yes, this movie is set in one of the more deadlier wars, like as if there was never any war that wasn't deadly, but this movie really did make World War I seem just as much as threatening as its younger, stronger brother, World War II. Like I said, I do highly recommend you guys to watch this movie if you're into movies that deal with war, movies that deal with World War I. But I would not actually say to myself that this is enjoyable, because although everything in this movie works, from the score to the cinematography to the direction to the actors to the characters, it's just filled with heartbreak and tragedy in the end, which doesn't make it enjoyable, but likable. So if I was to give a score out of 10, I would definitely give Journey's End an 8.5 out of 10. I highly recommend you guys to see this movie. It's an independent film. It's not high budget, but it's still a movie that has a great significance of importance to it. So I guess this ends my rider review. Thank you all for listening in. If you wish to subscribe to my channel, please feel free to do so. If you wish to leave a comment, go right ahead. But just remember the 3 simple rules. Be kind, be courteous, and please refrain from any rude comments. And I will be back again with another movie review. So until next time, this is our Rider saying, keep watching those movies, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.